Hi everyone, welcome to this deep dive video where I'll be talking all about strategy to execution with Ardoq. I'm Andrew Pittenbrough, I'm a solution consultant and subject matter expert of all things related to Ardoq. What specifically am I going to cover today? Well, we're going to look at establishing the strategic portfolio, the associated measures and the responsibilities of that portfolio, looking at establishing the change portfolio, how those two are related to each other to build out that strategy to execution link and chain, and also explore the strategic impact on the business capability model. We're going to explore doing this both in core Ardoq, which is the current interface that you see on screen, but also using Ardoq Discover, which is Ardoq's lightweight, business stakeholder friendly user interface to explore and discover information about the architecture. Before we get stuck in, I'd just like you to imagine a scenario where you've acquired Ardoq. It's about 6 to 9 months down the line from when you first started using it, and you're making great progress in terms of connecting and governing the data in the repository. Now you might have some questions about the impact of strategy and change on that architecture. So here I'd like to introduce the Ardoq MCP server. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. This is effectively a safe way to connect your internal systems to external LLMs and use conversational reasoning to query your data set. So what I'm going to do now is just start a chat with my repository. And I'm going to start by asking a question just to tell me about all the reports available in Ardoq that will give me some information about strategy and execution. More than anything, this is really to highlight how the MCP server is able to read data exposed through the Ardoq API. Next, I'm going to show you some of the reasoning capabilities to automatically choose different reports and collect data that I need, present those finding backs in different formats based on questions that I might have. For example, I'm going to ask the question, what are our most critical objectives? Who's responsible for them? What is their priority? Are they at risk? And if they are at risk, why? Here, the LLM is able to successfully pull together data from the different reports. Note that I did not tell it which report to use. It's using its own reasoning to query those different reports, bring that different data together, and once it's done with interrogating that data set, it will output the results in a way that really answers the question that I posed to the LLM in the first place. So the information that it will return, of course, is also cross-cutting across the different portfolios and the architecture layers. Indeed, what I'm being shown here are high priority objectives, some of the key information that I've requested, including progress, priority, investment, when the end date is, risk factors as well. This is some reasoning being factored in from the LLM. It's also highlighting potential resource conflicts, delayed or blocked initiatives. So again, going there from the strategic objectives to the initiatives and so on. So a really, really easy way for stakeholders to engage with the repository without needing no prior knowledge to how to navigate the architecture repository. As a final step, I could just say, output these results to an executive dashboard. And while Claude is busy doing its magic in the background there, let's come back to Ardoq, where I've already got an interactive dashboard prepared focusing on the strategic objectives of the organization. So here, really just giving executives or other consumers a snapshot into the state of things that relate to strategy. All the widgets on this dashboard are pulling information from the knowledge graph, the Ardoq knowledge graph, and displaying it through a series of these interactive widgets, and surfacing valuable insights like what is our strategic horizon distribution? What are our short-term or tactical objectives versus more our long-term bets? Where do we have potential blockers, objectives that are dependent on initiatives that are either in a blocked or delayed status? What is our overall objective progress? This again can be calculated based on key results. It can be calculated on the progress of your change portfolio, aggregated as well to give you a figure like that. Or potentially, where are their timeline conflicts? So objectives dependent on initiatives, where the initiative end date is later than the objective end date, thereby posing some risk in terms of your ability to execute on that objective on time. All these reports, the widgets are supported by reports in the back end, and we have the ability to filter this information down. So if I just want to search for all high priority reports, get a sense of what the strategic horizon is, I can see they're all within the short term, which is within 1 year. So definitely a lot of work cut out for the team addressing a lot of high priority objectives. So all these metrics and data for the dashboard, they come from the Ardoq knowledge graph, but let's look at how we actually build up to that strategic picture in the first place and link that to the change portfolio. So I'll start with an overview just of the strategic objectives. And if you're following our solution, our strategy to execution solution, you start first by capturing your strategic objectives, the associated measures, and very importantly, the people that are responsible for those things. So instead of keeping these objectives locked away in annual reports or disconnected PowerPoints, bring them into Ardoq where they can be further enriched and validated from the different team members. Gartner reports that about 59% of high-performing organizations have well-assigned responsibilities between objectives and people. So there's a clear link between organizations that are successful and able to execute on their strategy and the ability to appoint and communicate who the owners are of those specific objectives. This is also one of the key things that prevents organizations from successful strategy to execution is linking the objectives to the responsibilities. And this is covered in another one of Gartner's papers called The 5 Pillars of Successful Strategy Execution. We often hear from organizations that prioritization is a challenge. In fact, Boston Consulting reports that failing to prioritize slows change to a crawl. And while this might seem obvious, why do so many organizations struggle with it? Well, it's because they fundamentally lack the tooling and capability to bring together disconnected information from different sources to build out, visualize, and communicate that information, like we are doing here with this dependency map in Ardoq. So with Ardoq, we start with a simple prioritization on the objective. Is it a high priority, a medium priority, a low priority? Which are provided really by the senior leadership team or whoever the owner of the specific objectives are. And we can heat map this view to communicate it effectively to different stakeholders. Key results also determine how successful strategy execution will be measured. And capturing key result progress from the business leaders helps you keep track of where you need to be where you need to focus more or less in terms of investment and resourcing. The key result progress can as well be calculated and aggregated to the objective level. So you get a sense of where do we have high priority objectives that have got a low key result progress, aggregate low key result progress, then identify which of the specific measures are holding you back. Referring back to Gartner's article on the 5 pillars of successful strategy execution, another area that holds organizations back is the ability to cascade corporate level objectives down to team level objectives. As Ardoq is based on a knowledge graph, maintaining these types of connections is par for the course. Is really easy to do in Ardoq. We can collect again that information through crowdsourcing or loading it directly into the platform through any number of our integration mechanisms, or even capturing the information directly in the tool through, for example, the grid editor or the inventory mode. And so here we get a clear view of how corporate objectives are cascading down into the different team level objectives and who is responsible for that. We've often heard from customers that they struggle to communicate the relative complexity of something to different stakeholders without the support of a visual map like this. So truly a picture does tell 1,000 words. And in Ardoq, this type of view is automatically rendered based on the information that is stored within the knowledge graph. That saves architects a lot of time having to refactor disconnected PowerPoint presentations as and when data does change in the repository. So now that you've got some good data collected from the senior leadership team, from the different objective owners, let's head over to Ardoq Discover to see how stakeholders can view and update the same information. Just as a reminder, Discover there is the lightweight business user-friendly interface to explore the architecture repository to answer key questions and provide insights. So from the homepage, we can embed certain assets like linking to the same strategic portfolio dashboard that we accessed at the start of the presentation, and of course having the same ability to drill down to specific areas that are calling your attention, like active objectives without any initiatives. Stakeholders using Discover and the associated dashboards and reporting, of course, have the ability to filter that information just like we did. So they have full ability to slice and dice to get to the specific bits of data that they are interested in. From the contextual search, we can also quickly find relevant assets, for example, company objectives, if we just want to see what those company objectives are, and then use one or more of the pre-built strategy to execution viewpoints that are included with our solution to visualize that information. Again, in the previous view in Core Ardoq, we were talking about cascading priorities from company objectives down to team level objectives. And we see that visualized in this representation. Also with that priority heat mapping, the click of a button, we can change the viewpoint, maybe from the dependency or block diagram to more generating the roadmap. So your strategic roadmap from a company perspective. Where do we have strategies that are not currently supporting or supported by initiatives? And what is the downstream impact of those initiatives on things like your applications? Again, we can flick the switch to look at it more from a key result perspective, where again, we can just see who's responsible for those high-level strategic objectives and how we plan to measure them. Indeed, we can overlay information like the key result progress at the objective level. And as we have seen, if you need to introduce additional heat maps and things like that, we can do that also in Discover. This isn't only a static tool for consuming information, because we can dynamically update this information using Ardoq surveys that get published through to Discover. So your knowledge holders can contribute at will their knowledge back into the repository. Before any changes get submitted, there is the option of introducing a validation step whereby appointed owners will be able to validate information through a survey before it gets checked into the repository. So once again, Ardoq Discover is there to democratize your efforts to the wider organization and enable the team to be more efficient by making architectural data more accessible and self-service. But let's come back to core Ardoq, where we're going to pick up on the second part of strategy to execution, which is, of course, the execution piece. So starting again with the end in mind, a similar dashboard, but this time looking at the initiative status rather than the objective status. But just like the objective dashboard, the initiative dashboard highlights key areas like initiative status, where we might have potentially blockers or delays within our initiative portfolio that warrants our attention, or what our overall alignment is to our strategic objectives. And at 24%, there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done, but at least there's a small uptick in terms of the trend from 7 days ago. So being able to do this automatic trend analysis on key metrics is one of the key advantages of using the Ardoq reporting and dashboarding capabilities. Initiative budget and governance areas can also be surfaced and similarly reported on. So CapEx being channeled into initiatives can also be rolled through the graph to give you an understanding of the current capital investment going into your strategic objectives. Ultimately, enterprise architects and the project management office are responsible for connecting the dots from the data collected across systems and knowledge holders. The PMO usually has tools that support the capture of project, program, epic, and story information, which can be fed into Ardoq. These include tools like Jira, ServiceNow, SharePoint, for example, and many others, where in Ardoq we're collecting all that information and giving you an aggregated view of the change portfolio and how that links up to the strategic objectives. So with Ardoq surveying capabilities, you can similarly collect or validate that information from different knowledge holders and do so on a regular cadence, or when certain things happen or change, leveraging Ardoq's broadcasts. As we connect our strategic portfolio to our change initiatives, Ardoq can help you generate dependency maps and block diagrams like this one to clearly communicate where there are dependencies, both within the portfolio, but also between your strategic objectives and your change initiatives. We hear so often from customers that models like this really help to tell better stories because people can more easily grasp and visualize the complexity of doing something or visually show dependencies that might otherwise be unnoticed. We can also distribute simple surveys like this one to your project workers, whereby they are able to edit the existing entries. So these are all the change initiatives that are captured in the system, and connect that up to the strategic objective. So which strategic objective does this one realize? On this view as well, we can easily spot where there's disconnected initiatives. They're not connected up to any strategic initiatives like we can see for the IT tech debt one here. So let's see if there are any initiatives that we can potentially, objectives that we could potentially connect that initiative up to. So I'm just going to search for technical debt. Oh, there we go. So we've got an IT-related objective to reduce technical debt. So as a project worker, I can now connect up my initiative to the strategic objective, thereby creating that strategy to execution link. What you've just seen happen is this view dynamically update to reflect the information that has been captured through the survey. Now, with a few quick adjustments, we can also inspect and report on this information more from a time-based view on the data. The structure of the information in this timeline view, again, is based on the viewpoint definition. So it's really how these dots are connected through the knowledge graph that determines how the information is displayed in the different views. We can enrich the timelines with metadata and heat maps, just as we did with other views, for example, highlighting the objective priority, the initiative status, and the percentage of completeness of that initiative. By and large, now we've covered a big part of strategy to execution with Ardoq. The next part is how you can approach strategic impact on your business capability model and use this as a means of prioritization. For this approach to work, you need your capability model and capability experts documented in Ardoq. If you don't have these in place, Ardoq has solutions and support to help get you there really, really quickly. So with your capability model in place, what you want to do is start assessing your capability model to understand what are the issues the business is experiencing and why. And from that, capture the specific issues as capability deltas. So everywhere you see a yellow box in this dependency map is where we've got a documented capability gap or capability delta. In fact, again, this view has been optimized to only show capabilities with documented gaps. Just another example of how Ardoq's data-driven approach helps you get to relevant data very easily. Given the scope and resources available, your architects might do this across the entire business or piecemeal by focusing on the high priority capabilities with relatively low maturity scores. Good example here is something like sales orders, where it's impacted by a lot of capability gaps that have been identified. So potentially a lot of issues, relative low maturity, but highly differentiating, so giving you a competitive advantage. Indeed, with the capability expert in place, we also know who we can survey to collect additional information about that capability. We can also heat map this on the same view and use this to clearly communicate with different stakeholders why investment needs to be channeled to certain areas. So if we stick with the sales order example here, we can once again validate low maturity, high differentiation, a lot of gaps identified. And in fact, these gaps have been linked up to our strategic objectives. So one might say that the organization's ability to meet a strategic objective is the organization's ability to either introduce new capabilities or improve existing capabilities that have got or that don't have the required maturity to support those objectives. And we're seeing that link play out here in this dependency map. We can take it a step further as well and bring in the realizing initiatives, whereby we get kind of the full traceability now from the capability model through to the capability gaps to the objectives, and of course the initiatives that are realizing those objectives. Initiatives are really the component that connect your architecture up to change. So in this view, we're getting kind of an overview of strategic initiative impacts across domains like people, strategic objectives, what applications are they impacting, which organizations are they impacting, how they're impacting the business model. And we hear it time and time again from different customers that have experienced this pain when they are scoping out different projects. They're having to do it over and over again on the same components or the same information because that data is nowhere to be found. Ardoq helps with this by acting as a single source of truth, connecting to and aggregating information from different silos and people, which ultimately accelerate the time it takes to assess dependencies and impacts. At the same time, data can be visualized in a different way, like in a timeline view. We've already seen some examples, but here again, a roadmap automatically generated and kept up to date based on the data fed into the system, creating that full strategy to execution chain from the strategic objective through to the change initiative and the impacted parts of the capability model and the technology landscape. Now, I have one more view I'd like to show you, but before I do, I just want to say thanks for sticking with me so far. I know it's been quite a long video. I appreciate you sticking around, but I hope it's been useful and informative, in particular about how Ardoq addresses strategy to execution. Now, this view, more than anything else, is really a visual representation of complexity and the sheer number of interdependencies that you need to consider when addressing strategy to execution. Without Ardoq to support you, it's really hard to manage this level of complexity, especially if you consider that each bubble is a disparate system or disconnected data source. So why not use Ardoq to help you untangle that complexity and help your organization make better decisions about strategic execution, giving you the edge in today's highly volatile and changing market. Again, thanks for your time today in watching today's